First of all, I would like to apologize for my coarse voice. I'm running a very bad cold, so you'll have to probably put up with this voice for the next 1 hour or so. I'm so sorry for this. So we've been having a very good, interesting session all day today. We have had very big companies coming here presenting on various platforms of leveraging big data. We have witnessed various big data platforms. I think enough has been said about big data, the complexity behind big data, the challenges that we are facing, and how the platforms on big data, how we can leverage solutions using these platforms. Now, what we can do is we can see how predictive analytics, powerful predictive analytics or advanced analytics can be built on top of big data. So my session, e-commerce and cross-industry platform basically. These case illustrations would show how you can build analytics on top of big data, how you can leverage the solutions from analytics. Before I move on into today's presentation, just a bit about the company. Advanced Analytics using Mathematical Modeling, or OM, is established within the IITM ecosystem. It was established in the year 2008. Since 2009, we have been doing effective business. There are a lot of companies that is presently there in the analytics space, if you look at it. And a lot of these companies say they do analytics, and what they actually do would be basic Excel analysis and things like that. So this is where we have distinguished ourselves from the market by creating this niche segment called Advanced Analytics, focusing on basically the mathematical models. So that is where we come from, and our company, like I mentioned, it's established within the IITM ecosystem. It is founded by Rajesh Kumar, who is an IIT alumni himself, and we also have professors from IIT Madras in the board, Padma Shri Dr. Ashok Junjunwala, Professor Prakash Sai, and then we have another prominent personality in our board is Ms. Ushar Narayanan. Quickly about the company. We are a success story recognized and featured by the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Again, we got featured in TIE Network, the Dream to Destiny call feature in TIE Network. We have, I would say that we are 70% of a product company and 30% of service-oriented company. We have a platform called Genie Sites. It's an advanced analytics platform which offers customizable, scalable solutions to customers at a very affordable rate. So this platform is again, right now it is a domain-centric platform for the domains of finance, retail, travel, and e-commerce. We have around 6 strategic alliances with various companies across the globe. We have served more than 25 consulting assignments for various businesses and government organizations. We identified a small fund requirement in Jan 2014, and we raised investment in 15 days. And we have global footprints across Singapore, Canada, US, North America through our partner networks. We have been having a dedicated research and development office at IIT Madras Research Park, the building that you see here now, that you're currently in, since 2009. This is quickly about the company, not bragging more about the company. Now I'll quickly move on to my session. So quickly touching upon what we have seen till now. Looking at the growing data ecosystems, I think enough has been said about the 5 V's of big data. We have volume, velocity, variety, veracity, and the most important V, that is value. So when I say value, it is not just enough to have big data within your system. You also need to understand, to get the value, necessary value from big data if you want to, use that insights for your organization. So what we have seen is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to it. And if you look at the traditional BI architecture, is that good enough to serve your big data complexities or big data requirements? I would say it is not actually enough. The need of the hour is adaptive analytics, basically. So if you look at the traditional BI architecture, the analytical layer needs to come in, needs to be fit in. So we have the data source layer, we have the ETL layer on top of it, the data service layer, and on top of it, the analytics layer is quite essential these days if you want your business to sustain in the market, in the industry. So looking at analytics or big data analytics per se, it's a sunrise industry. It's pretty much like a software or IT in early 1980s. I mean, there was a lot of hype around it. Everybody's talking about it, but people did not know what it was actually about. But if you look at it today, if you look at software IT today, you cannot think of any organization without this kind of a service. It's omnipresent today. So likewise, big data also, it's growing in that same scale, same phase. There is going to be a day when people cannot think of running a business without any kind of advanced analytic solution or big data solutions. So what is the need of the hour is basically state-of-the-art tools, which needs to be creative, relevant, actionable, and which would justify your ROI. So how do we achieve this? Well, if you look at analytics, advanced analytics or analytical intelligence, it's not something that can be built in just one day. It needs to be built in stages. It is an additive process, not an exclusive process. Unlike if you look at software, you can just come and deploy it, and then you can start consuming those services immediately. But unlike that, analytics is not like that. It has to be built on the foundations. We need to understand data. We need people who understand data, people who are basically data scientists who would understand the complexities and the structures of data. So the stages of analytical intelligence, if you look at it, we have the reporting stage, the basic reporting, BI visualizations, then a bit of analysis has to happen, understanding what it is about, and then it would move on to monitoring what's happening now, and finally comes prediction. So these days, I think there's a lot of talk about predictive analytics, and people think that predictive analytical solutions can just be deployed in your organization just like that. Well, it does not work like that actually. I mean, you need to pass through these stages. And again, another important thing is, data scientists need to understand the domain, the business industry most importantly. You need to bring in that component also into your model deployment and things like that. Because what we see from the data, it would be just one perspective, one-sided perspective. What we need to understand is definitely the business domain part of it. So this is how analytical intelligence is built in stages, and what you need is basically people like us, data scientists who would create those centers of excellence and give you those various novel techniques which would help you gain insights from your data. So now what I'll do is I'll quickly take you through, I'll showcase a few case illustrations. I've touched upon, I've selectively picked up one case study from each domain, retail, e-commerce, and I have a cross-industry application also. So I think the first case illustration, it's on efficient handling of big data. So I'll just switch over to this MOOC. Hello? Is it okay? Am I loud enough? Okay. So efficient handling of big data, if you look at it, I'm not actually going to showcase this demo to you because I think enough has been said and shown about big data. This works especially if you have let's say memory-starved system server, let's say a very minimal configuration server, let's say an 8 GB RAM system with running on dual-core Ubuntu server, and you want to crunch some huge data. So what this technique does is we write the algorithms a bit differently, a bit efficiently, where the algorithms would actually use up your RAM, to not take up your RAM memory, it would rather do all your manipulation and everything using your hard disk memory. That is one way of looking at it. If you want to know more about this particular case illustration, I'm there at the stall. You can approach me. I shall demonstrate this to you. I'll quickly skip to the next case illustration, which is on unstructured data analysis. Well, I'm sure the speakers here have spoken about the one V of big data, which is variety. So one problem of big data is variety involved in it. We have data available in structured format as well as unstructured format. Now let's say unstructured format, you have data, social media data, the whole entire thing, the feeds that you get, everything is unstructured. Then if you look at your organization itself, you have those, if you look at the HR part of it, you have the feedback forms, everything which is again unstructured. So how do you leverage insights from this kind of a data, this kind of an unstructured format? That's what I shall demonstrate now. So typically if you look at this, in this industry, platform, text mining is the basic algorithm which comes out here, which is used in this case. Now what I'll do is to showcase these illustrations, I'll also piggyback on our advanced analytics platform, which is called GenieSights. platform, Genie Sites, it's available on a public domain. If you just log on to www.geniesites.com, you can view these platform yourself. I've just picked up, for this particular presentation, I've picked up selectively picked up few case illustrations, but there are a lot more of other algorithms that is available on this platform. This is a domain-centric platform. It is built on, currently we have algorithms suited for, tailor-made for retail, travel, finance and e-commerce. So I'll quickly showcase unstructured data analysis. So the case of unstructured data analysis, here I have taken the sample data that we have here is basically HR data. That is the feedback mails that the organization has used, the HR organization has basically received from its employees. So what we are going to analyze here is we're going to analyze these forms, the feedback mails that has been received by the management on various parameters, and few parameters like we have, certain things like job security, management, etc. So what I'll do is, what we have here is data basically, which is the HTML tag format data. So if you look at it, this is just an example of how the data looks like. It has got these the HTML tags within it, addresses, phone numbers, things like that coming there. So you want to remove all these the noise that is present there. You just want to pin down, analyze those few specific parameters. So what's happening currently is we are loading the data from these HTML formats that we have. The data is being loaded, as you can see, it is reading the data, and then it is identifying those specific parameters. So we have taken 4 parameters here: job satisfaction, management, security, and pay. So within the data, it's identifying wherever these parameters have been found, and it is doing some basic minimal cleansing in the form of the HTML tag removal and things like that. Once this has been done, this is the basic process which any unstructured data, text mining analysis would undergo, the basic, the pre-processing of data actually. Once this is done, we are basically piggybacking, we are using 2 techniques here to showcase. We are performing unstructured data analysis using 2 techniques here. First one is lexicon analysis, sentiment scoring using lexicon analysis. When I say lexicon analysis, what we have here is just a bag of positive and negative words. So these parameters has been linked to these bag of positive words. We're looking at that and then scoring these parameters. Sentiment scoring has been achieved. The second thing that we have done is a sentiment prediction analysis. Sentiment prediction is done using advanced analytical algorithms like KNN and SVM, 2 techniques that has been used here. So lexicon analysis, as I've told you, it is based on the bag of positive and negative words. So it associates each of the parameters that we have identified here with that bag and then develops a scoring framework on that. So currently, as you can see, what you see here is basically the UI interface to this platform. There is an analytics backend that is running behind this real time. So that's what the message text is coming there. As in when the analysis is being done, you can see it has done the scoring, it has performed some kind of ranking. Text, the feeds that is coming, gives in the kind of sentiment that is associated with the text. There is a manual learning that is happening there. This classification is fed into the machine learning techniques. So the machine learning techniques actually learn from these classification, and then that learning is used to predict the sentiment of the feedback mails. The domain of finance. What we have here is credit scoring analysis. So typically, if you look at banks and financial institutions, what happens is every day they might get in thousands and thousands of applicants, credit applicants would be coming to them. So this kind of a credit scoring framework to grade and analyze these applications would help them to, it will act as a screening mechanism basically for them. So once it passes, these applications passes through this exercise, it would help them to eliminate those bad credit applicants, and then it would come, it would, bring down the dimension to, let's say, 1,000. From 1,000, it would just pinpoint those 200 required set of applications, and then the manager can base his decisions based, on those just 200. Instead of looking at the whole 1,000, taking his time to look at 1,000, you can just do such an application for as a screening mechanism. So again, here what we have done is we have built this using various parametric as well as non-parametric techniques such as logistic regression, random forest here. How the data looks like. Data is just the basic credit history of the applicants. We have various parameters such as the checking account, duration history, basic bank data. Now the model is getting built on the fly. As I mentioned, we have used a parametric technique called logistic regression. There is another technique called random forest also that is being used. Logistic regression model is typically used when your credit decisions are basically binary. Here in this particular case, we have the decision is basically whether to give loan or not. It's a binary decision. So here we have generated the logistic model. As you can see, these are the model parameters. I'm not going to get into the technical details of the parameters. What we are showcasing here is basically the model for each and every one of you to see, visualize, and if you can actually critique on the model also. So this particular model has been built taking all the variables under consideration. This model has been generated. Then we have used another technique called random forest model. Now, random forest technique is a non-parametric technique, which it takes intelligence from decision trees, basically thousands of decision trees or n number of decision trees. When I say decision trees are built based on the rules from your previous credit decisions. So let's say 1,000 applicants. There is some history of the credit decisions, that whether you have given loan to the applicant based on few characteristics. That history of information you would be having. So if that history is fed into this algorithm, using those rules that has been come up from those decisions, it would come up with this kind of a modeling parameter. So this technique would help us to pin down to those specific variables. Let's say there are a lot of variables that is affecting the credit decision of an applicant. So it would pick up those few very important variables, help you to bring down your, reduce the model complexity basically. So what we have demonstrated is a logistic regression model and random forest model. In this particular industry, these techniques are extensively used for credit scoring. But what we are going to also do is generating a hybrid model that is a hybrid model that uses the intelligence of both the logistic regression model as well as the random forest model. And what you can see here is the ROC curve, the area under performance. If you look at it, the red line that you see is the ROC curve of the first model, the initial model built, which is just a plain logistic model. Then you have the orange color line that you see, which is the ROC curve of the random forest model that you've built on top of it. And finally, you have this blue, gray color line that you see is the ROC curve from the hybrid model. So as you can see from the plot, the area under the curve is maximum under this particular hybrid model. So that is the kind of, the accuracy level that you basically achieve when you generate, when you create that hybrid model. So that is what is demonstrated here. Now this is, I know I've got into the technicalities of it, but what would be of interest to us is once this has been done, once the model has been analyzed, I'm just showcasing how the model is, model building is done, model is built now. Once it is done, it is deployed, and then you have once a model is built, it has been deployed now. And how do we use the model information? We have this form here where you can just, if you want to get this decision, this model building, the credit decision exercise done for, let's say, one applicant, I'm just entering the details of the applicant here. I'm just entering some random values. Done, submitted. This model would predict real time your decision. So in this particular case, based on the information that I've given, the model has predicted that this particular customer should not be given loan, should be denied loan. It's coming a deny status. So this is typically what is happening in a credit scoring exercise. So a similar scoring framework could be done, depending on your requirement, your organization's things. The underlying model, the algorithms would all be the same. It would have to be tweaked according to your, according to the learning from your business domain, basically. So this is the illustration on credit scoring. Now I'll quickly touch upon one application, one illustration from the e-commerce segment. Now, in the e-commerce segment, I know, these terms look quite complex to you. So I'll just make it very simple. I won't go into the complexities of explaining the term. let's say in the e-commerce segment, or let's say not just e-commerce, I'm taking the case of your organization, let it be retail, any domain, you are running a marketing campaign on your customers. Now you want to effectively, it's not just necessary to run the marketing campaign, you want to analyze or assess the ROI, whether the marketing campaign had any impact on your ROI, whether customers, the turnout ratio of the customers was more just because of this marketing campaign. So this kind of an exercise, the propensity score modeling analysis, helps you in that kind of, an analysis assessment. So here what we have is, we have this just look at the segments. We have, let's say, a customer base of 1,000 customers. You have a marketing campaign, let's say it's a web promotion that's happening. The web promotion you have given randomly to, let's say, 500 customers, which is picked up from your database. And then the rest of the 500 customers, you have not targeted any kind of marketing campaign on them. You've just kept them as it. How do we do this? There are two different techniques that will be demonstrated here. One is supervised propensity and unsupervised propensity. We'll move on to the first technique. So now how we have this kind of an information, but how do you actually assess whether the marketing campaign has impacted our ROI? You can do that mostly by measuring how this has impacted your outcome variable. When I say outcome variable, it could be, let's say in the case of a retailer, whether the customer has visited, the visits of the customer has increased because of this, or whether the spend of the customer has spent more because of this marketing campaign. So you have to pass in that, you have to identify the outcome variable that you want to use. So typically your ROI will be measured against this outcome variable. That's what's happening here clearly. And this particular exercise, this propensity score modeling exercise is called, it is done here using a parametric technique, which is again the logistic regression model which we have used in the credit scoring algorithm. So here if you look at it, I know this graph seems a bit too complex, so I'll just try to explain it without getting into the technicalities. Now what this exercise has done here is, it has basically looked into your data, it has segmented your customers on basis of this propensity score. It has assigned up something called a propensity score. When I say propensity score, what it means is, let's say I, based on certain characteristics that I have, of my customer base, I've looked at an age parameter. Let's say I'm looking at the gender women. I'm looking at the age bracket between 30 to 35. I'm taking one segment of my customer base. I'm looking at also another customer of the same characteristics, the same, a lady who is within the same age bracket. Now the first lady would have been given this marketing promotion, and the second lady is not exposed to this marketing offering. Okay, this is how it is typically done. I compare the outcome. Now my outcome variable that I have used here is visits or anything, spend, it could be spend also. My outcome variable is compared between these two segments typically. So one thing to be noted here is the characteristics of the control. It's actually called control. The people who have been given the treatment, who have not been exposed to the campaign, it's called control variable. Who have been exposed to the campaign is called treatment variable. So I assess the difference between the control set and the treatment set on my outcome variable, which could be spend, visit, anything that you want to pass. Okay. Once this is assessed, that information is used to segment the customers. So if you look at it, based on that kind of a scoring, some kind of a scoring has been achieved using this information. I've segmented my customer, the number 5 that you see, my database of 1,000, the size 1,000, has been divided into 5 segments. That is, customers have the equal propensity ranking have been clubbed together, have been segmented together. And there is another segment which is achieved on 10, 15, 20 and so on. So what happens, the model iterates over various segments because we don't know which number would be ideal for, ideally give you the best information for you. So we iterate over various segments. And then finally, so if you look at this particular plot, what you see is typically called a box plot. It, in simple terms, it shows a data distribution. So if you look at this particular segment, you can see that the outcome variable here that I've considered is the total number of visits. The total number of visits is high in this particular segment only. When the population has been segmented into 5 groups, you see the total outcome variable is high. So it would be ideal for you to use this exercise to divide your customer base into 5 different segments, 5 different groups. That would give you the maximum, that would help you to identify that segment, which would give you, positively affect your marketing campaign. Now, okay. So typically this particular box plot that you see here, as I mentioned, it shows the data distribution. It is used to demonstrate the data distribution. Now if you look at it, the dark color line that you see is the median point. So that is the 50th point of your data, 50%. And then what you see here, this is the 25% of your data is here. This is 75% of your data. So what we see here, this is the interquartile range. 75 minus, which is the basic statistics. And what we have denoted by the dots here is basically the mean of the information, of the distribution. So typically, it's not necessary that the mean could be, mean is influenced by certain high or low values. So mean and median need not always be the same. The basic summary measures of data. And here you have the upper limit, the high end value, the low end value that you see. And what you see as these small round, the bubbles, that is basically an outlier. An outlier is typically an observation which behaves quite different from the rest of the observation. So the rest of the observation might typically follow a particular distribution, but the outlier would be too much of an extreme value. So that is basically an outlier. So this kind of a plot is typically used in such scenarios to understand how the data distribution is. So when I say the customer segment 5 is coming out, because if you look at it, the median value, you can see the higher tail, majority of the customers, the visit is higher for this segment only compared to the other segments. So that is why we have chosen this as the ideal number of segments. Now once this information is received, we have got that it is 5 is the best number to use. We provide that into the database, and what we have here is we're just comparing, we're looking into the count. Now we have divided the population of 1,000 customers into 5 different segments. We're looking at the count of the population. So if you look at it, frequency distribution, you can see the total population is around 100 people that you can see, which is of the control set that is in segment number 1 and of the treated set. And this is the frequency distribution, and what you see, this is the most important thing here, the outcome difference. So here if you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 denotes the various segments into which your population has been divided. And if you look at it, 1, the light blue color shows the control set, people who did not receive treatment, did not receive the marketing campaign, and the dark blue color shows the target set, which is people who received the marketing campaign. Now if you look at it for all these segments except for maybe 3, you can see the outcome difference, that is total visit here is always higher for the darker blue shade, implying that yes, this marketing campaign has been very effective for this segment compared to the other. So these are the segments that you would typically target for your exercise. So that is the case of supervised propensity. Now in unsupervised propensity, the same exercise is actually repeated. Only thing is the technique used here is different. So in analytics, there are thousands of algorithms that is available to you. You can achieve the same thing in n number of ways. So it's not, it's not just enough to limit your exercise to just one model, see how it performs. We have to extend this to various other models and then use the best one. So that is what is done here. You've looked into a non-parametric case also. So here again you can see the data distribution is coming out quite interesting. The same exercise is done, comparing the data distribution and then looking at the frequency values. So this is the case of propensity score modeling. It's typically used in the marketing campaign scenario to identify whether that campaign is actually effectively it has had a good effect, positive effect on your ROI. Now, loyalty analytics, I think this is, I think it should be one case illustration which would be appealing to most of you sitting here, and I think this is much simpler compared to whatever demonstrations I've showcased till now. So, loyalty analytics, now what we have done here is, till now we saw various algorithms in silos. We saw how, we saw something on unstructured data analysis, we saw propensity score and credit scoring. Well, while these solutions are there in silos, it is also important to integrate these various algorithms and also study them, give them a comprehensive look so that we derive better insights from it. So this kind of an exercise is done here on loyalty. Now, when you typically look at loyalty, be it loyalty is something that is applicable to any domain, whether it is the retail domain, travel domain, e-commerce, everything. I mean, loyalty is the most important factor. So, if you look at it here, what we've done is we have used certain basic things like customer segmentation, customer engagement levels, customer lifetime value, and then so with some of these algorithms, we've put everything together to give a comprehensive picture of how it would fit into your organization. And then based on this analysis, you can build your own loyalty editions. It's something that we are giving for you to play with. Basically, you can see those patterns, then you can build you can frame your own loyalty editions based on these patterns. And the data that is required for this kind of an exercise is all just basic in-house data that you have, your transaction or point of sale data if it's a retailer, the customer demographics data, some kind of an information if you are collecting that, and the campaign data if you are having any marketing campaigns, running any marketing campaigns, that kind of a data. Okay, so looking at the retailer's point of view or the perspective, these are basic things that any retailer would like to know. For example, who are your loyal customers? What are the, it's not just enough to understand the loyal customers, also the customer purchase patterns, those cross-selling, upselling opportunities of your loyal customers. So again, there comes the market basket analysis. And then again, the question of whether your marketing campaign has affected your organization positively, and how is the engagement level of your customers. So you have these questions in mind. Now you typically want to see how this works. Okay. So the first thing, I'm taking a case of a retailer. Let's say the retailer has got stores across India. I'm taking the case of an Indian retailer, has got stores across India. So north, south, east, west, he's got different stores, he's got customers in all these regions. So the first thing that, usually which comes to the mind is to segregate your customers by region. The basic thing that comes. So here what I'm doing is first I'm going to segregate the customers by region. I'm looking at the, let's say I'm taking a region, the north region. I want to see my customers, how my customers in the north region are doing. Now the first exercise that it does is basic customer segmentation. So customer segmentation here is etched on something called an RFM analysis. Now RFM analysis, as you can see, R refers to recency of the customer. That is how recent your customer was to your store. That is how recent your customer was, to the purchases that has been made. Another parameter that you want to look at is the frequency, or number of times the customer has visited your store. Another thing that is of interest to you is the monetary value that the customer brings to your store, the monetary value. And then what we have here, what you see here is actually a composite score that we have built using these three parameters. So we have R, we have F, we have M. Based on these three parameters, we have built a composite scoring. We've come up with a scoring and scored the customers on this scoring. So as you can see some digits there between 0 to 5.4. That's the scoring of the customers. And then we are typically looking at customers with score greater than or equal to 4. That is the high-end customers basically. Those customers with score greater than 4 would imply that the customer's recency is good, frequency is good, as well as monetary is good. So we're looking at those customers and we're qualifying them as, let's say, that's basically your elite customer base, because the loyal customers lie there basically. Now we are going to analyze the elite customers. Now you have identified. So typically what you did was you segregated your customers by region. Then you looked at an RFM analysis, customer segmentation using RFM. From there you derived a composite score, and then you are looking at what is called an elite customer basket, basically the high-end customers. Now once you have this information, you've identified your elite customer base. Now you also need to tie this information with various parameters. Let's say demography. You also need to understand the customer cross-selling, upselling opportunities. When I say cross-selling, upselling opportunities, it's just the customer purchase patterns. So what I have here is, for North region, my set of elite customers and their customer purchase patterns. So customer purchase patterns here, what you see here is the item frequency plot. When I say item frequency plot, this is the top 20 commodities that the customer has basically purchased. So when you want to target some kind of promotional activity on these customers, you would basically look at these product categories, the top 20 commodities which the customer has consumed. And then just below that, we have something called association rules. These rules that you can see here, qualify the customer purchase patterns. Now, I'll just explain what it is. Now, there's something called an LHS of a rule, there's something called an RHS of the rule. These two together qualify the customer purchase bucket. So that means customers who bought honey, they have also bought whole milk along with it. That is the first rule that is coming out of your customer purchase pattern. And these rules are qualified by 3 metrics called support, confidence, and lift. Now, support is typically the proportion of this particular of the LHS in your transaction database. That is what support is. If you look at confidence, it is basically how much of your RHS qualifies in transactions which has got LHS. That is how much of whole milk is qualified in transactions with honey. That is what confidence qualifies, and lift is basically the ratio of these two metrics. So you frame these rules from the algorithm here identifies those rules. Yes. Can you give the mic?
Then how do you define the rank? Because you are taking, let's say, 3-4 parameters into consideration, and how do you assign the weightages there? So that is one. Second, if you are looking at this association rules which you are taking into account, let's say support, confidence, and lift. So are you only looking at the positive correlation analysis, or are you again looking at the negative correlation analysis with respect to lift or the rules which you are generating? Because if you go behind the literature and the business use cases in the current day scenario, the positive rules are good because they give you instantly a lot of data. But there are negative rules which give you revenue generation opportunities. So have you taken those into consideration, or it is all just positive ones?
Okay. So on the first question, that is customer scoring, the scoring parameter, the composite score has been built on 3 metrics: recency, frequency, and monetary. So what we've done is we have given scorings 1 to 5 based on the recency buckets of the customer. So a customer who's more recent to your store, who's most recent, would get the maximum weightage. We have given a kind of weightage factor to customers who have been most recent to your store. Similarly, customers with the highest frequency would again get a weightage, and customers with highest monetary value would get weightage. So weightages have been given according to their recency, frequency, and monetary levels. Actually, we have bucketed customers on these levels, and accordingly, so customer who visited your store last year would get a very low weightage of, let's say, score of 1, compared to a customer who just visited your store 5 days ago. That customer would be given a weightage of 5, let's say a scoring of 5. And from these 3 metrics, we have derived the composite RFM score. So that kind of a weightage has been built into the system to establish the segmenting, the customer segmentation part. Now, your second question on the positive rules. For this particular exercise, we are just looking at the positive set of rules. Basically, rather when I say positive rules, these rules are qualified. The rules are coming out of your customer purchase patterns. But how good the rule is, that is qualified by the support, confidence, and lift. So it's not exactly the negativity of the rules that is qualified here, but a rule with very low support, very low confidence, and lift does not actually have any kind of a meaning in your database. So we'll always look for rules with high support value, high confidence, and lift. And if you look at the negativity per se, no, we have not looked. For this particular exercise, we have not qualified any negative associations. So yes, so these are those rules for you. So these rules can be extracted again in any format that you want to, and then you can directly use them for your decision making. So this is the cross-selling, upselling opportunities. Now we have identified, so we had the segmentation, we had we looked into the cross-selling, upselling opportunities of your elite customers. Now what you want to also see is the engagement level of the customers. How are these customers engaging over a period of time? So for that, we have something called a cohort analysis. Now when I say cohort analysis, here what we have is Jan 2007. What you see here are basically customers who have registered in Jan 2007. So that is why you see the first month, you see always the engagement is 100%, because they have visited at your store at least once. The first visit to your store has happened in that particular month. And then over a period of time, over the next couple of months, next 12 months, how has the customer been engaging with your store? That is what these numbers signify. So when I say 20%, it means that out of, let's say there were 100 customers who've registered in Jan 2007, out of that, only 20 people have come back to your store in the month of March. So this is what these numbers qualify. And again, if you click on these numbers, you can actually drill down to see those list of the customer IDs or unique customer IDs who is belonging to the bucket. So here again, this kind of an exercise helps you to again see where the engagement level is lacking, where what is actually going wrong in your promotions or whatever, and then specifically you can target these customers. So now you know the engagement is going bad here. So certain deep discounts can be offered to these customers so that they can come back to your store. So this is customer engagement level. Now you have understood your customer engagement level also. Now you want to understand who reacts to your marketing campaigns most positively. This is also a similar exercise to propensity scoring that we saw before, but here it is the terminology that is used here is uplift modeling. And here what we do is, if you typically look at your segments, there are 4 sets of people, your customers basically. One is your customers, a set of customers who would come back to your store or who would react positively to the marketing campaign. Let's say you are running an email campaign. That customer is coming to your store because he or she has received the email campaign. That is one set of customers who react most positively. There is another set of customers, whether or not you give that email campaign, you run the campaign on them, those customers are very much likely to come to your store. Rather, your elite customer base actually falls into that. They are very much conscious about your brand or all those things. That is one set. The third set are those customers who are basically, to whom the campaign might have a negative effect. That is, just because you ran that campaign on that person, he might get irritated with it and he might never visit your store. And then there is another set who's not at all bothered, whatever happens, you're not at all bothered. So you have these set of customers. Now what you want to typically do is you want to identify those customers who come back to your store only because the campaign is working. Because that is where you have to spend your money on. Because there is no point in spending money on all your elite customer. You have to do something about it. But if they are very much brand loyal and all that loyalty is defined in that base, then you don't have to spend too much on them. But for these set of customers, in this terminology we call them persuadables basically. You need to concentrate all your marketing campaigns, all your marketing spent on this set of customers. So this kind of an exercise helps you, whatever we have showcased here in uplift modeling exercise, helps you to identify that set. Once you've identified that set, you basically want to see how they are performing, how in which area they belong to, or you can tie that particular set. So let's say 1,000 customer database, you've identified the persuadables from this exercise. 200 customers have been identified as your persuadables. Now you know those customers. Now we want to segment, tie other parameters to those customers. Let's say channel, let's say area, it could be anything. Here we have restricted it to area and channel. So it could be anything, age, gender, any parameter. Once you understand those parameters, you can effectively, in this particular case, if you look at it, we are looking at area here. Area we have suburban, urban and rural. So if you look at it, most of your persuadables are actually belonging to the suburban area, followed by the urban category. Rural category, there are no customers in that who are actually your persuadables. That means there is no point in running any kind of marketing promotion, at least as of now, on your rural segment. You can concentrate much more on your suburban or urban segment. That is one thing. And the next thing is looking at the channel. So channel, when I say here we have two kinds. We have the web channel, we have the medium of the marketing campaign. It could be web promotion, could be a phone call that is being made to the customer. So looking at the channel and then segmenting the customers. So here it shows which channel would be most effective for your marketing campaign, whether web is good enough for you or do you have to concentrate on your phone campaign to do it better. So in this case, there are two campaigns, one web 1 and web 2, phone 1 and phone 2, and web 1 is clearly coming out as a success to you, to your organization. So web 2 is, as you can see, web 2 is not at all happening, and phone 1 and phone 2 also, if you look at it, it's not coming out well. Now another thing is also an interaction plot where you combine these two knowledge, that is the area information as well as channel information. It could be any other parameter. We are, for demonstration purpose, we have just taken area channel. It could be anything that you want to. We have looked into it, interaction, and then we are qualifying the customers on these parameters also. So how we began the exercise was we looked into basic segmentation by region. Then we built an RFM score on top of it. We identified the elite customers. Then we identified the cross-selling, upselling opportunities of our elite customers. Then we looked at the engagement level. Now we are looking at the uplift, that is a persuadable category from that. And as you can see, the interaction also, the suburban, rural, urban, rural, the same insight is coming. Whether it is suburban is coming good, urban, and then you have web 1 is coming as good. Now we have understood these parameters. Now another important thing of this, the loyalty part of it, is the lifetime value of the customers. Now how do you assess the lifetime value of the customers? Well, all this is good enough, but most importantly, you want your customers to come back to you. You want you want customers with very good or high lifetime. So what we have done here is we have computed the customer lifetime value of the retained customers. We have divided them into levels, as you can see. We have divided them into high, medium, and low CLTV values. We're comparing this CLTV metric with the revenue parameter. Revenue also, if you look at it, we have divided customers based on their revenue as high, medium, and low. We're combining these two. What you see here is typically the red color box that you see here are customers with low CLTV as well as low revenue. So there's no point, I mean, those customers, neither do they come back to you nor their revenue is good. And then you have the various other categories, low CLTV but medium revenue. And this category, if you look at it, the CLTV is high, but the revenue is again medium. But this particular green box that you see, those are your most loyal customers, because not only their CLTV value is very high, but also their revenue contribution to your firm is also very high. So typically what one would want to see, a retailer would like to see, is basically all these customers moving into this region. So this kind of an exercise helps you to identify this segment, what is your proportion. So in this particular case, around 16% of this customer database is in this category. He would definitely, whereas the red category, if you look at it, around 14% is there in the red category. You would typically want to move all these people to this segment. Or if you look at this category, again, the revenue is very high, but their CLTV is very is medium. Or this category, this is again another category, high CLTV, but their revenue towards the company is not, your organization is not very good. So you want to move all these people to your this thing. This is a CLTV exercise. Now you have understood what CLTV is also. Zoom. Can you zoom a little? You can see the button there. Zoom out. Zoom out. Where is the button there? No? The button. Where is it? I have to click on this. Sorry. Okay. So now what you have done is you have looked into the parameters, and you have identified the CLTV. You're looking at the high CLTV, high revenue category. Now we are tying this to other parameters. Here we have just taken two parameters, age and gender. So nothing much is coming out of it. If you look at it, the proportion wise, if you look at it, the gender thing is almost, equal. Almost 50% is female, 50% is male. Now, so you tie that CLTV value to various parameters to get that information also. Now, once you have done this, you also want to see how your customers have performed over time. This is the scenario, one-time scenario, but how does it happen over the years? Is this trend noticeable over the years? That is where this time or the trend component becomes useful for us. So here, if you look at it, if you look at 2006 Q1, you see that this particular base, their CLTV value seems to be very high for this particular quarter only. So what has happened in that? Maybe some kind of a campaign was very effective, that was run in this particular quarter was very effective for these customers. So probably they want to bring back that kind of a campaign, that type back into their organization for effective engagement. That is something that the retailer can look at. Now once all this is done, we have seen everything in an integrated format. We have seen all these analysis is there for you. I think there is too much of information there, because you have everything about, you know everything about your customers in terms of your lifetime value, engagement level, cross-selling, upselling opportunities, everything is there. Now, here is a loyalty, build your loyalty dashboard for you. So now you have this marketing campaign, you want to target an order segment. So let's say you want to run your loyalty program on your North segment. So this is a dashboard which will help you to build those rules yourself. From the intelligence, we have already done all the analysis, we've computed the information that is there in the model. Now you can build your own loyalty decisions on top of it. So let's say we are taking the North segment of customers and you want to look at the North segment, you want to target your loyalty on in your loyalty program on the top, let's say 30 percentage. So I'm giving top 30 percentage. Here top 30 percentage, it is determined on the RFM score that we have passed on before. So that is given. So they have identified who are those top 30 percentage of your customer base. Once this information is there, let's choose a product category on which you want to run the loyalty program on. So we have various categories. We've just put for illustration. We've used three categories. We have dairy products, is it bakery or frozen products. Let's say I'm taking bakery items. I want to run my loyalty program only on this. So now I have decided that also. Now once this is identified, do I want to target my campaign only on the persuadables, the one that we have discussed before, that is those customers who react most positively to your campaign. And then I say yes, I do want that. And then how do you want to further qualify their lifetime value? Then I give the lifetime value of the customer. Let's say I want to target the medium. Anybody have any questions on this particular? Yes, sir.
Answer kind of thing. Why you want to pose it as a regression problem? And also how actually you are saying you are going to deny whatever. How confident you are in when your decision has taken. Okay.
So what happens is typically the first thing is here credit scoring framework is basically a screening mechanism. So you have so many applicants and you want to quickly screen out those few applicants. The manager might not have time to individually assess each of the applicants because final decision is of course, it is more an intuitive thing that comes out. Yeah. But the manager might not have time to go down to each of these applicants and then analyze. So in that kind of a scenario, this kind of a credit scoring framework comes very handy. And why we have used regression is because the learning, it is much more the kind of the results that you see there is much more. This is the best thing to do for this.
No, you are doing all attributes should be numerical when you are talking about regression.
No, not necessarily. Regression also there are different varieties of regression where your dependent variable could be just binary, or it could be levels, or your independent variables could be levels. So if it's on a special category, simple linear regression is where you want your dependent and independent variables to be numericals. But otherwise, there are different types of categories which allows this kind of a modeling. And another thing is how confident are we in saying this? Usually what is happening is, we also give the probability score attached to the decision. So we say the deny, and we also say the probability of this to happen would be, let's say, 80%. So we attach the probability score also along with this kind of addition.
One quick input to that is if you score the variables and if you sum it, you might sum it something very different. But if you look into the past decisions of your variables, how the back matches are handled, it could differ from place to place and area to area, time zone, right? And time periods. All this could be very, very different. So looking at that context, you can derive the intelligence from the past decisions. So simple quantifying technique might not be correct. So which is why we want to predict it based on a logistic regression model. So once you have those parameters ready, you will have the specific context. So in this case, she might just need to feed in the value, and it is going to piggyback on the logistic regression model. So there are some variables categorical, there are some variables ordinal, and there are some variables numerical. So based on those specific things, it is going to show you whether the person is good enough for a credit decision or not.
Yeah. They are always saying lies, damn lies, and then statistics.
Okay.
So how do I believe?
See, the thing is, if you look at credit bureaus, right? So if you look at any of the credit bureaus, right, they would not look at the quantifying mechanism. So apparently, like you look at the kind of work that goes right to a bank manager, right? So overall, like you build a training model, and naturally you need to test it, right? So whenever the cross segment, right, ratio is good enough, 99%, basically it's you have to divide your sample case. The training set is like 80%. And like your testing set is 20%. First, you need to showcase whether within your own decisions you are hitting good results. So that is first achieved here. Then only we can go and put it outside, right? So in all these cases, she would have hit the accuracy level to the tune of 99 point something. Then only we can showcase, look, this works, right? Yeah.
So I think the first.
Just last bit. This is very good. This is in fact a good comprehensive continuous integration kind of a thing. But how different it is from the market leaders such as Attensity or Rapid6 or NetBase, because they do all of these, right?
Okay.
Whatever you have been doing. So how different? Means I want to know the back-end technology stack. One. Okay. Second, just to add on what Professor was saying, yes, we need to do numeric data only on the regression value, correct? But I can always recast all my quantitative data into quantitative data any time. Just a simple mapping.
Good, good. That's a very good question. See, the product Genie sites, if you look into it, this is our key differentiator. There are gazillion companies approach any of the people. What they would do is they will have a very, very fat consulting time. They will give the product, then they will have a services line around it, and then it's going to cost a lot to the people. So what we have done here is, over a period of time, for the past 3-4 years, we have come up with the platform that is going to give you a rapid product deployment. So I have not seen anything like this in the industry. Today, there is this company called Adapa. There's a company called Zementis, which gives analytics as a service. But that is also limited to a certain few cases. This is the first kind, we have carefully chosen Genie as a brand ambassador because we make magic out of insights, and that's our own product. So it has a lot of these plug and play kind of a model, and where we invested a lot of our time and efforts building this. So if you are in a retail segment, I would build it to your specifics. If you are in an e-commerce segment, I'll build it to your specifics. What makes us best is because we understand the statistics with the domain context. So my ability is I can quickly build this platform for you at not much efforts or services they would typically charge you, right? Cost would be a key factor, and service would be a key factor in this case. Yeah, thank you. True. Sure. See, the thing is, this work that we have done is adapted from the credit scoring exercise that we have done for NABARD, piloted in 2 banks. One is the Indian Bank and Indian Overseas Bank over a period of time. So prior to our engagement, like you said, they have been using some calculators. Nothing much. Basically, the last 6 to 7 questions, exactly 10 questions, you put in this value. Each end of question will have a select weightage. 10, then you'll sum it up. For 100, you got 60 reject credit. That's what it is. But the natural flaw in this is the way in which you grade would be fundamentally different from the way in which I grade, right? So it is people-centric, number one. Second thing is, it is also specific to the particular time period, right? Nobody is going to look into it. So there are some parameters one has to investigate from the data point of view, right? So immediately we remove the people bias. The best way to hit that is piggybacking on regression models, where it would again be good enough, right? Then we qualify on a hybrid model. That's what like Kish mentioned. Machine learning happens there with random forest models. Finally, we build a showcase saying hybrid model, wherein we have test the waters and it comes out correct, and then we build a proof of concept around it. Thank you.
I'll just showcase. Mic is working. I'll just showcase the unstructured data analysis application which we were running in the first thing. So I think we moved on to the lexicon analysis part of it. So lexicon analysis, like I mentioned, from the bag of positive and negative words, it is qualified. It is done a scoring on these parameters of job satisfaction, management, security, pay. It is a scoring ranging from -1 to 1. So the more negative it is, the more negative are the feedback for these factors. So if you look at it, management is one attribute where a lot of negative comments have been received from the employees. So this is the first part to it, the lexicon analysis. And then sentiment prediction, as I mentioned, using advanced analytical algorithms like KNN, SVM. These machine learning techniques, what it does is, like I mentioned, the analyst sits before the data and reads each content, then manually classifies the content as whether this particular sentiment was a positive sentiment, negative sentiment, or a neutral sentiment, depending on the type. And then that a set of information is passed on to the machine learning algorithm to learn from it. So what we have used is two techniques, and then what we have done is we have run an algorithm. We have tested this, how this particular technique has worked compared to the original data. So you can find this KNN technique has performed well compared to the SVM technique. KNN, you can see the accuracy level is around 72%. What you see is the comments, how it has been classified. And finally, once we have identified this model, the model is built, it is deployed. Now testing the waters on this model, I've just picked up randomly one mail which is there. If you just read the mail, you can see the content which was there in the mail, and I'm using this to test on the parameter management. You can see it is coming out as negative, just like what it says in the mail. So this is just an example, testing waters on this thing. So this is on unstructured data analysis. I think one of you wanted to see the application. Now I'll just quickly conclude on what I've been discussing so far. So I've showcased all these various applications, illustrations for your business to effectively leverage insights from data. Now, like the last slide says, it's about the theory of evolution. You need to continuously evolve if you actually want to make your business stay in the industry. So software and IT is definitely there, it is omnipresent, but most importantly nowadays you need to incorporate analytics into your organization if you really want to say. So it's an era of not just big data, it's an era of also smart data now. So it's a survival of the smartest that is happening, not necessarily the fittest. So this is the current, few case illustrations on how predictive, or powerful analytics can be built on built for your big data. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. And if anybody has got any queries other than whatever is this, we can have it. I think I'm not sure. Varsha, we're running out of time. Okay, so I think
we can take some questions. Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you how it has happened. Some 3 to 4 years ago, when we wanted to speak about analytics to the customers, there have been it's very, very difficult to talk about analytics because it's so new. It is a lot of data. It's very, very difficult to show the results to the customers. We started building few applications that would simplify the advanced analytics and show it as a platform. So what you saw as Genie site is basically an attempt to create or help the marketing team to go with some select proof of concept. Over a period of time, we realized this is the problem that the industry has, right? So we started building a platform around it. Today, we look into it, right? We have a lot of algorithms that are plug and play, right? It would serve as a quick proof of concept. So in this podium, some of them have left, we are doing a rapid prototype deployment, right? So with this, it is quite easy for us to showcase the value, right? So today, you have a customer, and I could quickly come to you and say, look, this is what the value is. Because that's the first thing that is required. First thing is I'm going to put my efforts now, right? I'm going to lock in some efforts. Do I see value in this? Yes, with Genie sites will show the value. Second thing is we would also need to understand what are the things that is logged in the data. That goes as a specific consulting and comes as an improvement. Yeah.
Okay, can I take answer as you have to be
there is R involved, there is Aveka involved, there is Java scripts involved. The entire framework is running on top of Java, right? So whatever that you see here is a Java service that fires our analytical engine. Genie Sites, if you look into it, there is a reporting engine, there is this analytical engine. Analytical engine is totally our knowledge, right? So basically we have built in those algorithms. It remains as a black box, and moment your Java requests for a service, which is what she is doing. So one thing that she also demonstrated over the uplift model, it took some time the graphs to show up. I mean, like, those are not simple graphs, those are like, churning out from the analytics. Real time, there is a logistic regression model that is running on top of the data, and it classifies the variables as clusters, and then it fires up the dashboard. So then it passes the information to the reporting engine, which pushes the data out, right? Yeah. Thank you. And we do have a big data platform called Jumbo, but I would not talk about this in this forum because it's a Saturday evening. I could see a lot of group face already. Few more questions, if you have.
I guess it's more of a time, it's more quicker
Yeah.
to adapt to your system as opposed to going through a long process of getting
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's more quick to market, quick to get a quicker decision by not getting the 100% of it. Maybe even 90% of it, at least it's done by day.
Yes. See, our customers, have typically who are my customers? The customers who believe data can do something for me. You show me the value, what is that you can do, right? I mean, they would not have exactly this is what the requirement is, right? I know that you guys are there in IIT Madras, you can do something. What is that you can do? So for that, instead of showing presentations, these things serves best for us. Yeah. Very quickly, we can hit the models and show, and then that the stickiness happens. Quickly, thank you all, thank everybody in this. This is the first time we are conducting a conference of this size. And our company, we believe very strongly, we created this Genie Sites, which is like one-stop solution to all the analytics requirement. We have very strong backing with IIT Madras. And I take this opportunity first to thank all the sponsors, IBM, Atos, Amazon, Actuate, Citibank, collaborators who are willing to give the time and talk about the specific platform. Few of you expressed it was more of a product demonstration, but believe me, I have ensured the content it to not be more specific to product promotion, but it has come out a bit different. But there is a learning opportunity, right? The feedback from you is phenomenal. At least I'm quite enjoying interacting with each one of you during the networking session or lunch session. It was really a very, very good opportunity for us to conduct this big data conference for you. You can keep watching us this space. We are a growing company, and sooner, in a year or time, we'll hit the lights. Yeah. Thank you again for making up to this conference at home. We express the sincere.